Got it.
Morning, sir.
Good morning. Almost. Well, it's still morning.
Happy Easter. Happy Resurrection Day.
Happy Resurrection Day to you too, sir.
Happy seventh initiation day of Christ. Fourth initiation was Friday, I guess, for Jesus. So, what a awesome time of year it is for us, and these energies. And
Spring is upon us. It's a time of rebirth.
yeah,
Back. So, last time we're here in Rule 11 of a Treatise on White Magic, which we started last session, I believe. We got through the first statement of the rule. We left off at the second, which is where we'll be picking up today.
yeah, 463 in the book, right?
Yep, top of 463. And as you can see, we have it cast up on the screen. So I don't know where we are in the PDF. I stopped tracking that when we got this nifty software. So
Okay, yeah, that's good.
But if anyone's still following along, I'm sure you can just find it by numeral 2, statement 2 of Rule 11. So without further ado, let's get started.
All right.
So pronounce the words which will tell them what to do and where to carry that which has been made. Let us remember, in connection with this rule, that it is only potent insofar as the worker with the law is en rapport with the inner reality within himself, with the soul. It is essential that through him, in full waking consciousness, the soul should be functioning. It is the soul who pronounces the words. It is the soul who utters forth the mystic phrase, but it is the soul as controller or ruler of the mechanism of the form apparatus. This control is only possible when there is alignment of the brain and mind and soul. Again, it is necessary to remember that this rule, beginning and expression of the creative work, applies to all creative process. Whether macrocosmic or microcosmic, whether we are dealing with God as the creator of the solar system, with the soul as the creator of the human mechanism, or with the man as he attempts to master the technique of the magical work and so become a creator of forms in his own little sphere. All have to work out the true significance of the rule, for God works under the law of his being, and this law demonstrates to us as the laws of nature. The ideas of ordered activity and of a conscious and purposeful goal are bound up in the phrase we are considering. The builder of any form is first of all a controller of lives and the arbiter of the destinies of certain entities. In this thought, we have light thrown upon the subject of free will and upon the law of cause and effect. It must not be forgotten, however, that the mystery of causes lies hid in past universes. All, in their day, the forms indwelt by God. For us, there can be no such thing as pure cause, but only the working out of major effects. Just as for us, such a reality as pure reason is totally incomprehensible and unattainable, so with pure cause. These factors antedate our solar system, and therefore speculation about them remains unrewarded, except insofar as it tends to develop the mental apparatus. This solar system is a system of effects, which in their turn generate causes. Only in the human family and only among those human beings who are consciously using mind power are any causes of any kind being generated. All causes being initiated by a mind of some kind, functioning consciously and thinking clearly, posit a thinker. And this is profoundly the position of the occult sciences. Our solar system is a thought form, but one having real existence just as long as thought persists. All that is forms part of the current of ideas emanating from the divine thinker. All thoughts are part of a divine stream. The mass of people think not, and so do not generate causes that must in due time produce their effect. Oops. You ask, where then the truth of the statement made in many occult modern books that the trend of life or cycle of lives indicates necessarily the future, and that the causes initiated in one life work out as effects in another? Where lives where lives are predominantly emotional and are physically oriented. It is not a particular life that sets the pace, but the group of lives, simultaneously interacting with each other, predisposes the future along certain lines. This is eternally true of all human beings at a certain level of conscious development, where they are swayed by mass ideas, molded unthinkingly by tradition and public opinion, are frankly immersed in selfish interests, and are not taking hold of conditions themselves, but are being carried forward on the tide of evolution. In this form of group activity, groups that are governed by the vibration of physical and astral forms, this form of group activity produces the characteristics and tendencies which causes the situation and environing circumstances. In this realization lies hid the secret of racial and national karma and conditions. In these groups, the ordinary feeling, active man is immersed, and out of this immersion, he must find his way by discovering and using his mind. Instinct must give place to intellect. For cycles of lives, groups of souls incarnate through the pull of the material forms towards which they are attracted. These attractive energies have earlier been utilized by the soul, finally being discarded and disintegrated. It is the potency of form which in the first case draws the soul into incarnation, or in the first half of the evolutionary process matter, highly organized in a previous solar system, is the dominant factor. Later, we know, spirit mounts on the shoulder of matter. The mass interplay of spirit and matter is now so potent that one of the major experiences that a soul undergoes is the achieving of the stage wherein the pull of matter begins to wane and the soul learns to detach itself. This is the experience through which humanity is now passing. Again, a group activity on a higher turn of the spiral. Large generalizations are indeed safer than the detailed and oft erroneous information and the rules governing the taking and relinquishing of form found in much of our puerile literature. But even these generalizations should be regarded with such distrust. All that can be posited is that under the law of cause and effect, spirit and matter coalesced and the worlds were made. Governed by the same law, forms were created and became material expressions of the life urge. They were swept in and out of manifestation according to a rhythmic cyclic beat initiated in still earlier solar systems than the one immediately preceding ours. Groups of forms appeared and disappeared and were governed almost entirely by their group coherence and vibration. So the life progressed through the elemental or involutionary kingdoms, through the three lower kingdoms in nature, and on into the human kingdom. In the lower human stages and in the stage of animal man, the same group activity reigns, only as in the involutionary kingdoms, becoming smaller and smaller groups as the individual units achieve, one by one, the status of truly self-conscious individuals and begin to work as souls. Then they not only become creators with the power of standing alone, with the faculty of clear thinking and accurate visualization, but demonstrate also that they are the possessors of the creative art or faculty of creative imagination. They pass through life after life of self-sufficiency in which the personality is developed and used. Then they begin to find their subjective group, which will eventually take the place of the outer material groups in their consciousness. Thus, they regain again group existence, only this time in full awareness and control.
That
You have a thought there?
alludes to quite a bit there. I want to say that alludes to all the, you know, the transition from objective to subjective life, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
It's just, yeah, unbelievable, man. All right, sorry.
Don't be. In the group with which they find themselves subjectively affiliated will be found those who have worked with them in the earlier mass state, so that they work in close association with those who have been nearest to them and who have been linked with them in the great life cycle. There are certain names given to these stages in the occult archives which are suggestive and illuminating. They are, of course, symbolic. It might be of interest if I gave some of these ancient cryptic utterances which convey 3 items of information, namely, the name of the stage, its esoteric color, and its symbol. I would like to point out, however, that these intriguing pieces of information which I at times convey, and which some of the students seem to regard as of vital importance, are of far less importance than the injunction to live kindly, speak words of gentleness and of wisdom, and practice self-forgetfulness. The occult data is read and noted. The familiar instructions are skipped and overlooked. We who work with aspirants smile oft at the foolishness and lack of judgment evinced by those who we teach. Say to a student, practice with steadfastness the law of loving kindness, and he will say that, indeed, he will attempt to do, but within himself, the very familiarity of the injunction palls and is deemed, at best, a needed platitude. Say to the student, I will give you some occult phrases or some items of information and the great ones, and with keenness, with excitement, and with smug self-satisfaction, and with a pleased curiosity, he prepares for the important revelation. Yet the earlier injunction is the conveyor of occult information and indicates a law which, if rightly followed, leads to release and liberation. The latter concerns phenomena, and the knowledge of it leads not the weary pilgrim to the gates of heaven. Some of you need this reminder. So there's a lot of truth in that for sure. The key point here is, I think, practicing the loving kindness and doing so right, for that first thing that he noted.
You know, we're ridiculous.
Of course we are.
So at least we know it, you know, because we're like children in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, probably in a much bigger way than we even realize. But we're looking for things that every once in a while tickle the ears, man.
Sure.
And, you know, to be honest with you, some of those things keep us going sometimes from
Right.
our perspective. You know, the ardent truths are, you know, that's what keeps our attention, and the subtle things not so. We're just moving. We have to move towards the more subtle and just let go of those things. It's tough. It's tough growing up. You got to laugh that they laugh, you know, and that we're here laughing. They laugh at us. We're down here laughing about it too. So we're all just getting a big laugh about it. You know, and it wasn't just yesterday that, you know, I was talking to our friend Amy about the need for a sense of humor in this. So it's funny. You know, we got to keep it light.
That we do. Okay, those stages which precede the human are omitted as none who will read these words possess the equipment to comprehend their inner sense. We will begin, therefore, with the stages in the human kingdom. Stage 1, the life has climbed the stairway long through the daily use of form. Through the lesser 3, with progress slow, the long path has been traveled. Another door stands open now. The words sound forth. Enter upon the way of real desire. The life that only knows itself as form enshrouds itself in vivid red, the red of known desire, and through the red all longed for forms approach, are grasped and held, used and discarded until the red changes to rose, and rose to the palest pink, and pink to white.
Hey, you seen any, sorry, man, you seen any of the music awards or the Super Bowl or any of the that halftime show
I
or
didn't
the
watch any of it this year. No.
Grammys and anything like that? Where they got them all dressed in bright red, weird, bright red outfits. Yeah, just saying. Interesting.
The red of desire. Yeah. The rose of grasped and held, used and discarded until the red changes to rose, rose to palest pink, pink to white, forth flowers, then the pure white rose of life. The tiny rose of living life is seen in bud, not yet the full-blown flower. Stage 2. Oops. Further. The picture changes form. Another voice coming from close at hand utters another phrase. The life continues on its way. Enter the field where children play and join their game. Awakened to the game of life, the soul passes the gate. The field is green, and on its broad expanse, the many forms of the one moving life disport themselves. They weave the dance of life, the many patterned forms God takes. The soul enters the playground of the Lord and plays thereon until he sees the star with 5 bright points and says, "My star." The star is but a point of light, not yet a radiant sun. Stage 3. The way of red desire fails. It loses its allure. The playground of the sons of God no longer holds appeal. The voice which has twice sounded from out the world of form sounds now within the heart. The challenge comes. Prove thine own worth. Take to thyself the orange ball of thy one-pointed purpose. Responsive to the sounded word, the living soul, immersed in form, emerges from the many forms and hews its onward way. The way of the destroyer comes, the builder, and again the tearer down of forms. The broken forms hold not the power to satisfy. The soul's own form is now the greatest desire, and thus it's not the great desire, and thus there comes the entering of the playground of the mind.
So we just transcended the astral plane there, and the physical and the astral, and now we're moving up onto the mental plane.
Yeah.
That's nice. We can see, and that's why we got the chart up, man, because we can always make this.
Yeah.
This correlation is always there.
Just wanted to go back real quick because, yes. So this rule 11, as we read last time, this is the last of the governing work on the astral plane.
Yeah.
So, all right.
But through these stages right now, I think we're going up to the mental from the below, right?
Where was I? I forgot.
You didn't get to the
way of
cold,
the
white yet.
The way of the destroyer comes, the builder, and again the tearer down of forms. The broken forms hold not the power to satisfy. The soul's own form is now the great desire, and thus there comes the entering of the playground of the mind. But in these dreams and fantasies, at times a vision comes, a vision of a folded lotus flower, close-petaled, tightly sealed, lacking aroma yet, but bathed in cold blue light. Orange and blue in some more distant time will blended be, but far off yet the date. Their blending bathes the bud in light and causes future opening. Let the light shine. Stage 4. Into the dark, life proceeds. A different voice seems to sound forth. Enter the cave and find your own. Walk in the dark, and on your head carry a lighted lamp. The cave is dark and lonely. Cold is it, and a place of many sounds and voices. The voice of the many sons of God, left playing on the playground of the Lord, make their appeal for light. The cave is long and narrow. Excuse me. The air is full of fog. The sound of running water meets the rushing sound of wind and frequent roll of thunder. Far off, dim and most vaguely seen, appears an oval opening, its color blue. Stretched athwart the space of blue, a rosy cross is seen. And at the center of the cross, where 4 arms meet, a rose. Upon the upper limb, a vibrant diamond shines, within a star 5-pointed. The living soul drives forward towards the cross, which bars his way of life, revealed and known. Not yet the cross is mounted, and therefore left behind. But onward goes the living soul, eyes fixed upon the cross, ears open to the wailing cries of all his brother souls. Stage 5. Out into radiant life and light. The cave is left behind. The cross is overturned. The way stands clear. The word sounds clear within the head and not within the heart. Enter again the playground of the Lord, and this time lead the games. The way upon the second tier of stairs stands barred. This by the soul's own act. No longer red desire governs all the life, but now the clear blue flame burns strong. Upon the bottom step of the barred way, he turns back and passes down the stairs onto the playground, meeting dead shells built in an earlier stage, stepping upon forms discarded and destroyed, and holding forth the hands of helpfulness. Upon his shoulder sits the bird of peace. Upon his feet, the sandals of the messenger. Not yet the utter glory of the radiant life. Not yet the entering into everlasting peace, but still the work and still the lifting of the little ones. Here in symbolic form, we have pictures of human life and progress, of life and form, and growing through the building process, which marks the creative work. It is only a bald translation of some mantric phrases and of some basic symbols, and must in no way be considered to be anything except indicative of a process, veiled and couched so that only those who know can understand. Esotericists will understand that these 5 stages cover the life period of every form, no matter whether the creator is cosmic, planetary, or human. Oops, a little bit too far there. Excuse me. Every form is built by an impulsive spark of life, emanated by a creator and growing stage by stage under the law of accretion, an aspect of the law of attraction, which is the law of life. This law cooperates with the law of cause and effect, which, as we know, is the law governing matter. Cause, attraction or desire, accretion and effect, these 4 words govern the construction of any thought form. When the latter is a completed entity, it is an effect built by accretion under the power of an organized cause. The race has evolved now to a point where we think of effects primarily in terms of quality rather than in terms of matter. A thought form exists for us in order to produce an effect. The raison d'etre, or I think that's the most important reason, of all forms we have come to feel is to express some subjective quality which will give us the key to its creator's purpose. Ponder on these words. Hence, we find in this rule 11, oh yeah, we're in rule 11. Hence, we find in this rule 11, the purpose of the word pronounced is to tell the lives which constitute the form. What to do and where to carry that which has been made. Thus, we find the idea of purpose, activity, and goal. There is no need for me to add to the vast amount of literature which has been put forth or to emphasize the significance of purpose in connection with such a thought form as a solar system, a planet, a kingdom in nature, or a human being. In some respects, the subjective triplicity of purpose, activity, and goal is well known, and in others it is of too high and too inscrutable a nature for us to deal with in these instructions and wander into the realms of speculation. With the goal, religion has long sought to deal. With the activity aspect, the scientist is now attempting to deal. And with the will of God, the most advanced thinkers and philosophers are constantly speculating. Only when man submits himself to the discipline of his own spiritual will and controls the activity of the lives within his form nature, and so orients himself to the goal as it progressively makes its appeal to his vision, will he arrive at a true understanding of the plan, which constitutes the will of God as far as human beings can grasp it. But with the thought forms which he is beginning to create as he daily learns to think, we can concern ourselves, for it is the first lesson soon to be learnt in the magical work. The creator in mental matter has, A, to learn to build intelligently, B, to give the impulse through right speech which will animate that which he has built and so enable the thought form to convey the intended idea, and C, to send out his thought form correctly oriented to his goal and so truly directed that it will reach the objective and accomplish its sender's purpose. The necessity for clear thinking and the elimination of idle, destructive, and negative thoughts becomes increasingly apparent as the aspirant progresses upon his way. As the power of the mind increases, and as the human being differentiates his thought increasingly from as thought, he inevitably builds thought substance into form. It is at first automatic and unconscious. He cannot help so doing, and fortunately for the race, the forms constructed are so feeble that they are largely innocuous, and so in line with mass thought that they are negligible in their effect. But as man evolves, his power and his capacity to harm or to help increases. And unless he learns to build rightly and correctly to motivate that which he has built, he will become a destructive agency and a center of harmful force, destroying and harming not only himself, as we shall see shortly, but equally hurting and harming those who vibrate to his note. So there's a lot in there.
Yeah, that's shut me
So we
up.
have to,
Put it that way. Yeah,
well, you got to take care of with our thoughts. We have to approach everything intelligently, but we have to be careful of the thought forms we develop, I guess, which makes sense.
I see,
Especially,
I see becoming an individual, the process of individualization here. like
Mhm.
true individualization, true separation from the masses, right? And then, the learning after the separation, learning to create properly, but inevitably, there's going to be mistakes.
Mhm.
I can't see how. Hopefully, they're just small, right? Like little lessons learned throughout the day to add up to one big lesson of how to create properly, potentially, instead
Right.
of going taking that left-hand path and really building manifesting this selfish thing, because we're obviously not trying to be, we're not going that route. This isn't the way this material goes.
Right.
It's just a matter of getting it tweaked properly so that the mind is, functioning in the way to build what's proper, I
Right.
guess. I'm anxious to see where this goes here.
So as we progress, we become more clear thinkers, where there's the necessity to become more clear thinker versus and eliminate all of these potentially destructive and negative thoughts. Because as we progress along the path, those potentially destructive and negative thoughts can actually become very harmful
Yeah.
to ourselves and those who are following along. Well, to
Yeah.
vibrate to his note, but I think that means I is that insinuating following along the same path, essentially, or part of the group consciousness, perhaps. So that goes with the whole, we've talked about it before, with Carla, and then it just made me think of karma. Everyone looks at karma. Most people look at karma as an individual thing that you create for yourself, or a person creates for themselves by doing a certain act. But there's insinuation here that the karma you create are these potentially destructive or negative thoughts that can thereby, create bad karma or negative karma. It's really doing it for more than just the person. It's impacting the greater whole.
Right.
And that's where we get the development of world karma. And I think we talked about it a little bit last week or the week before, where and I can't remember if we talked about it on video or maybe it was one of our side discussions, but or maybe it wasn't even with you, it might have been with my wife now that I think about it. But I was thinking about the and this really doesn't go with the thought form process, but anyway, back to the karma thing, and I'm getting a little off topic here, but I was thinking to the Tennessee shooting, the school shooting, and that people would look at that person as having created bad karma just for themselves. But what, in terms of police officers that had to respond and had to essentially take the assailant out, what karma is created there? What karma is created for the manufacturers of the weapon that was used, or the ammunition?
All of the implications are
But I mean,
astounding. Yeah, yes, sir.
it's more than just a one person, one instance type of thing. It affects a greater whole, and people don't really think about that, or I think see that clearly. But anyway, sorry, I got a
Well, it's
little off
kind of
topic
like,
there.
how dare you?
Right.
Like, I kind of like, how dare you create that much ripple?
But you're creating it for the whole world, because it ripples out, and
Right.
it's like you're dropping a pebble in a lake. That ripple's going to go. I mean, look behind me. Those waves move back and forth. They don't stop.
I mean, the teachers, the children, it's just affecting the whole entire community, and then the country, and then these groups of others that that fall into that community that are good,
right.
That are not trying to do those things, or
and then you've got the people that are seeing it, from a different lens that are angered by it and, you know, wanted, you know, in some terms, take justice in their own hands and things like that. And,
Oh yeah, went to the extreme of the polarity spectrum or of separation, right?
right.
Like that's the furthest extreme. There's no equilibrium.
Yeah.
All the way over to the negative side of that.
So it just has, like you said, a ripple effect that eventually impacts really almost everybody, if not. So anyway, sorry about
Yeah,
that. We
well,
got a little bit
no,
off
no, man,
topic, but it kind of
I
follows
got it.
along with this whole, you know, that's where we've got to get, eliminating these idle, destructive, negative thoughts, because as you move further down the path, that can have this big impact that you're not really kind of foreseeing. But anyway.
I see exactly where he was. That was very good.
Excuse me. All right, so vibrate to his note. Granted, all this you might possibly inquire. Are there some simple rules which the earnest and sincere beginner could apply to this science of building, and which are so clear and concise that they will produce the needed effect? There are, and I will state them simply so that the beginner will, if he follows them, escape the dangers of black magic and learn to build in line with the plan. He will, if he follows the rules I give, avoid the intricate problem which he has himself blindly constructed, and which will indeed shut out the light of day, darken his world, and imprison him in a wall of forms which will embody for him his own peculiar great illusion. These rules may sound too simple for the learned aspirant, but for those who are willing to become as little children, they will be found to be a safe guide into truth and will eventually make them able to pass the tests for adeptship. Some are couched in terms symbolic, others are necessarily blinds. Still others express the truth just as it is. So, I think there's 15 of these total. The first one being, view the world of thought and separate the false out of the true. View the world of thought, separate the false out of the true. It is pretty straightforward. The second, learn the meaning of illusion, and in its midst, locate the golden thread of truth. Third, control the body of emotion, for the waves that rise upon the stormy seas of life engulf the swimmer, shut out the sun, and render all plans futile. So get your emotions under control. 4, discover that thou hast a mind and learn its dual use. 5, concentrate the thinking principle and be the master of thy mental world. 6, learn that the thinker and his thought and that which is the means of thought are diverse in their nature, yet one in ultimate reality. 7, act as the thinker and learn it is not right to prostitute thy thought to the base use of separative desire. 8, the energy of thought is for the good of all and for the furtherance of the plan of God. Use it not, therefore, for thy selfish ends. 9, before a thought form is by thee constructed, vision its purpose, ascertain its goal, and verify the motive. 10, for thee, the aspirant on the way of life, the way of conscious building is not yet the goal. The work of cleaning out the atmosphere of thought, of barring fast the doors of thought to hate and pain, to fear and jealousy and low desire, must first precede the conscious work of building. See to thy aura, O traveler on the way. 11, Watch close the gates of thought. Sentinel desire. Cast out all fear, all hate, all greed. Look out and up. 12. Because the life is mostly centered on the plane of concrete life, thy words and speech will indicate thy thoughts. To these pay close attention. 13. Too far. Speech is of triple kind. The idle words will each produce effect. If good and kind, naught need be done. If otherwise, the paying of the price cannot be long delayed. The selfish words, sent forth with strong intent, build up a wall of separation. Long time it takes to break that wall and so release the stored up selfish purpose. See to thy motive and seek to use those words which blend the little life with the large purpose of the will of God. The word of hate, the cruel speech which ruins those who feel its spell, the poisonous gossip passed along because it gives a thrill. These words kill the flickering impulses of the soul, cut at the roots of life, and so bring death. If spoken in the light of day, just retribution will they bring. When spoken and then registered as lies, they strengthen that illusory world in which the speaker lives and holds him back from liberation. If uttered with intent to hurt, to bruise and kill, they wander back to him who sent them forth, and him they bruise and kill. 14. The idle thought, the selfish thought, the cruel, hateful thought, if rendered into word, produce a prison, poison all the springs of life, lead to disease, and cause disaster and delay. Therefore, be sweet and kind and good as far as in thee lies. Keep silence, and the light will enter in. And 15, speak not to self, pity not thy fate. The thoughts of self and of thy lower destiny prevent the inner voice of thine own soul from striking upon thine ear. Speak of the soul, enlarge upon the plan. Forget thyself in building for the world. Thus is the law of form offset. Thus can the rule of love enter upon that world. These simple rules will lay right foundations for the carrying forward of the magical work, and will render the mental body so clear and so powerful that right motive will control and true work in building will be possible. Much of the significance of this rule must remain theoretical, be considered as holding a challenge until such time as the real magical work of thought form building becomes universally possible. The formula, as we have seen, will remain unknown to all save the members of the hierarchy of adepts for long ages to come. The directional words are capable of ascertainment, but only to those who are working consciously under the guidance of their own souls, and who, through mind control merging into deep meditation, can manipulate the matter of thought and become knowing creators. These can and do speak the impulsive words which bring into being those new forms and organisms, those expressions of ideas and those organizations which live their life cycle and serve their purpose, and so come duly to their timely and appointed end. These creators are the leaders and organizers, the teachers and the guides in all phases of human living. Their sound does go forth into all lands, and their note is internationally recognized. Hundreds of such names are easily remembered and spring unhidden to the mind. They live in the memory of the multitude, and that which lives is the sound of their accomplishment, be that good or bad. But in the sentence, which we must consider, we find portrayed a universal function. Even though it is even though it is as yet carried forward for the most part unconsciously. The words to be dealt with are as follows. 3, I think this is the third statement in the rule, right? Yep, utter forth the mystic phrases, utter forth the mystic phrase, which will save him from their work. But before we go into that, do you have any comments on what we just read?
Now, this is, we've just got to prepare the mind. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
The atmosphere has to be clear. And there's a lot of work that, that prior to, to getting to this point, this is a big deal.
Right. All right. Well, let's get started with this a little bit here. So this is the third statement in Rule 11. Finally, to utter forth the mystic phrase, which will save him from their work. Therefore, it appears that at the close of the magical work of creation, a phrase must be enunciated which effects a salvation and produces a liberation of a dual kind. A liberation of the creating agent from the form which he has created, and the emancipation of that form from the control of the one who has brought it into being. It is obvious that already the nature of speech in relation to embodied ideas is being somewhat understood. Study the method of talk, which is now the main factor employed to launch an idea. Note how all inventions, which are neither more nor less than embodied concepts, come into exoteric being on the physical plane through the power of the spoken word, and consider also with care the occult significance underlying all conferences, all meetings, all consultations, and all discussions which concern themselves with the launching of some idea or set of ideas upon the sea of public necessity. May it not be possible that under the modes of activity employed by the advertising agencies and the constant training given to salesmen in the use of the spoken word as a means of approach to the public in order to sell an idea, we shall find the first distorted indications of the emanations of those mystic phrases, which will bring into being the creation of the soul in all fields of creative enterprise? It's quite a long question. May it not be possible. May it not be possible. Okay. Just want to read over that again real quick. All right, well, let's get into it. The training of public opinion, the utilization of catchwords and slogans, the tendency to embody the concepts of campaigners in trite and apposite phrases are part of the growing realization as to the magical work. All these means are employed blindly and without true realization. They constitute a part of the emerging activities of the humanity which is on the verge of real creative work, the principles of which are not yet understood nor scientifically applied. But they do point the way, and under the simplification which marks the return to synthesis, we shall have the cessation of speech and the utilization of simpler forms. Under the evolutionary urge, we have had the creative sound, the word, speech. The latter, in its turn, has been differentiated into words, phrases, sentences, paragraphs, books, until we now have the era wherein this differentiation is at its height, and we have speeches at all hours of the day and night. We have the utilization of the public platform to reach the public ear, and of the radio to reach all classes and races of humanity in an effort to mold public opinion and bring certain ideas and concepts into the public consciousness. We have the publication of books, literally in their millions, and all playing their part in the same great work. And we have as yet both methods of communication being prostituted to the selfish ends and ambitious purposes of those who speak and write. Yet there are a few true creators who are endeavoring to make their sound heard, to speak those mystical words which will enable humanity to see the vision. Thus will be dispersed eventually the clouds of thought forms, which at this time shut out the clear light of God. So, we're talking about the spreading of these messages through public forums, which, again, as a reminder, this book was written in the early 20th century. And they certainly didn't have as much.
1934.
Yeah, so there certainly wasn't as much
Wasn't YouTube.
Media influence as we have now, right? And it speaks a little bit, well, I mean, yeah, so it speaks about more people will be coming to speak this out into the public consciousness. Well, here we are doing it right here on our YouTube channel. But it's a little interesting.
Well, yeah, what's interesting is, the mainstream at this point is really propaganda tool.
Well, I was going to say the mainstream isn't spreading these messages. I think they're trying to tip the public consciousness in a different way. But,
yeah. Well, you got to fight your way out of that.
Being used as a tool of what we refer to as those evil forces that are trying to do whatever it is that they're doing. So
it's very distorted, just as a whole, from multiple perspectives at this point. Because coming from the military and thinking in terms of intelligence, you would generally watch the news to see what we are providing to the other foreign intelligence.
right.
So the average person is watching it thinking that they're getting news, but then the average foreign intelligence is watching it thinking that they're gathering intelligence, when really it's a very strange distortion. I don't think anybody's getting anything out of it at all.
I know. I mean, you mean in terms of getting anything good out of it?
Nothing good.
No,
You're not getting any level of anything out of it. Like you can't even action on what you do get. You can't not. I mean, it's just
well.
It's empty.
Yeah, it's because it's not conveying what's really happening. It's only conveying a limited perception that can essentially be used as a tool. I mean, so I'm going to be harsh here for a minute, which is a bit atypical of me, but they're playing on the stupidity of the masses, because most people will just see what they see and believe it, instead of digging in and trying to understand the underlying, or seeing through that what we're being shown, whatever news flavor of the day we're being shown, could very well just be a distraction for something else that's really going on that they don't want us paying attention to.
All of the above, sir. I think you're correct. And it's just amazing and very freaky to watch, because, neither one of us watch the mainstream news very often at all.
Right.
Sometimes I turn it on out of my curiosity to see what they're pushing. Like, what's the narrative that they want the masses to hear, what they want foreign intelligence to hear. And it's so diluted. It's very difficult to put a storyline together to grasp any sort of actual happenings.
Right.
Like you can't really put the big picture together. It's very scattered and tossed around.
Well, and I think it's purposeful that they're doing it that way too.
I mean, they can't even, I mean, you can't even build a false picture, essentially. If you follow what the mass media is putting out. So, yeah, it's something that you could talk about all day. I don't,
But I think here he was getting more to.
I was thinking TED Talks is what came to mind. One of the things that came to mind. TED Talks pass a lot of perspectives to the masses, and they don't really have a right or left requirement. Anybody can do a TED Talk and anybody can listen, so it's not, there's no narrative that I've seen come from that. I don't know, they're not swayed in any particular way, so that's just what I thought of as you were reading it. I was like, oh yeah, this is good, public platform to reach the public ear.
Yeah.
And free, we want free speech, and we want to be able to, to express and discern, like as if we can't discern, right? Like, do you need to prevent our ears from hearing certain things? That limits our growth. We need to hear all the perspectives
Absolutely.
help us
Yeah.
immensely.
Yeah.
You may not agree, but still it doesn't matter. You want to hear that's what people believe, or that's what they're thinking. And
well, and people will, so many people will just stop and accept what they hear at a point of it feeds them what they actually want to hear. You know what I mean? Instead of creating some self-tension, so you have to work through it a little bit more to kind of peel back some of those veils of illusion even further, so you can really uncover what's really going on, I guess.
Well, if we look at the chart, right, and we call the astral plane, as we did earlier in this, the playground of the gods, or the lords, or whatever it had said, you can create this and it's believed there. But once you get on the mental plane, you automatically know, and you can see straight through it, that wait a minute, this is not what that was happening here. So there's that, or you see the meaning of the symbols and from the mental plane, as it's represented, and what it actually what it's symbolizing, what these things actually mean.
Right.
But we're watching is an astral dream that, I want to say we were stuck in, or many are stuck in, or, and we're kind of waking out of that and becoming more, and this was noted in the stages, I want to say, the common monastic phase, where, there is mental, still emotional, but also mental awareness. And then we're kind of moving away from that in lieu of really the more, what is, and moving away from the emotional connection to what we're being told. That makes sense. So we're moving up this ladder. We're moving up the chart, and seeing things for what they are.
Yeah.
You got to get out of that you need to hear this stuff too.
Well,
This
and
is
that's, I
what
was
this
just
is
gonna,
for.
yeah, well, I was gonna say, the expansion of the communication technologies and different platforms that can get information out publicly. Well, it can be muddled with a whole bunch of, hogwash that people will just stop and listen to because it feeds their need, but it's also an avenue for, more avenue for these materials to get out there and bring in the perspective that everyone needs to hear as well. So,
Well, you had said earlier that, we're in the
We're-
end of the astral plane here,
right,
and we're moving into the physical. And I had thought initially, wonder why we did it, in that way, but I just kind of hit me. You get people up onto the mental plane, and then we look down on it from
mhm,
that position, from the higher position. We don't start from the low and constantly look. I think what DK did here was he brought everybody right out the gate up to the mental plane, and now we're speaking to it as if it's already done, and we're looking at it from above downward.
right,
We're going down into it, but we're staying. He got us to the mental plane, and we're looking down,
right.
and we're just analyzing that what's down, and then we're going down, and then, but we're staying up. So I don't know, but it makes a lot of sense in my mind now.
Well, it does, because I think what you're trying to say is we're kind of looking at this at the higher mental perspective. Because just in our discussion here, we're talking about, not just taking things for face value that you see and expressed publicly on some communication form, right? I mean, you've gotta dig a bit deeper. You gotta think about it more intelligently. But anyway, I'm sure he's probably going to explain it a bit more here as we progress, because that's usually what we find out happens.
Well, we need, in that though, we need to think about what we're hearing, what level, what we're hearing is coming from as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's pretty amazing to me. That we're and we being you and me, I'm talking about right now. We're kind of able to see these things the way we see them now versus maybe how we would have saw them 2 or 3 years ago.
It's just because we've been coming from the men, it's what Carla's
Right.
always said. Do not let anybody, we're not letting anybody play. She didn't say this, but this is my take on it. We're not letting anybody play around on the astral plane.
You're paraphrased.
Yeah, we're not playing on the astral plane.
Right.
No, that is absolutely not.
All right. Well, let's see what he has to say here.
Yeah.
So the subject is too large for me to elaborate in this treatise, even though we just tried to elaborate it a bit. I but seek to make suggestions which will carry to the intelligent reader some idea of the enormous progress which has been made in the magical work. In this way, he will be enabled to go forward with optimism, knowing that hitherto all has been good inasmuch as man has progressed in knowledge. Out of the present welter of speech and of words, of lectures and of books, a few clear concepts will surely emerge, which will find an echo in the hearts of men. Thus also will men be led into the new age, wherein talk will die out and books come to naught. For the lines of subjective communication will lie open. Men will recognize that noise acts as a deterrent to telepathic intercourse. The written word will not be needed either, for men will use symbols of light and color to supplement through the eye what the subjective hearing has recorded. But that day is not yet. even though the radio and television are the first steps in the right direction.
Hey,
Putting
so
it-
is
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
what, did he just, I mean, I need to ask a question here. Did he just explain what is going on higher? On higher levels? Did he just tell us that we're moving in that direction? Like,
Yes, I think so. I think it's getting into all of these materials that are being put out there are going to aid in the it says right here, out of the present welter of speech and words, lectures and of books, a few clear concepts will surely emerge, which will find an echo in the hearts of men. But thus also men will be led into the new age, wherein talk will die out and books come to naught. For the lines of subjective communication lie open. And we will recognize that noise acts as a deterrent to telepathic intercourse. And I think we said before that, you know, telepathy is, so that kind of where we got to pick that up at some point here.
I assume this is already a, this is already a thing in other higher levels, and this is what it will be. We are working towards.
But I think it's what is, I think, and I don't know, I'm not the expert and I don't claim to know anything here, but men will recognize that noise acts as a deterrent to telepathic intercourse. So at some point, all of this stuff just becomes noise because we should be telepathically connected.
Yeah, it's just great, man.
So
Good stuff.
once we're telepathically connected, there's really going to be no need for the noise, the chipper jabber, right? The written word will not be needed either. For men will use symbols of light and color to supplement through the eye what the subjective hearing has recorded. But that day is not yet, even though the radio and television are the first steps in the right direction. So it sounds like our current technological advancements, and we've seen a progression since this is just radio and television, which were new things, well, television anyway, but relatively new things when this book was written. But now we're into the internet age where we can gain and pass along even more information at
Everything.
at a great level of ease. But with that also is caution, because you can also pass a whole lot of BS that doesn't need to be going out there. So but I think what it's saying here is that that's kind of a progression, an evolution of where we're going to get to this telepathy stage, I think. And that, you know, we've had these more wide-reaching lines of communication that can get information to people and work that into the group consciousness. But at some point, we're not going to need any of it. No books, none of this, not what we're doing right now.
Because it's said that, yeah, we're building the mind.
We'll be telepathically connected and one, as one, with one, and everyone. And so we won't even need, we'll just have the knowledge.
Yeah, it was said that, you know, the Lemurians built the physical plane, the Atlanteans built the astral plane, and we, the Aryans, are building the monastic plane, mental plane. So everything that's in it, we will assume that we'll have access. Oh, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
It is interesting. Now, the question is, when we get to that stage, Well, we have bad actors out there who will be trying to telepathically spread BS. I don't know.
I think the door
Or will that,
evil closes
or
for a while.
where will that will be when we yeah, seal the door.
Yeah,
where
because
evil dwells.
once enough people are up on the mental plane, we would never allow, we won't allow that.
Right.
The scales will have tipped and
We'll have built-in filters.
yeah, I mean, there's gonna be, that's gonna definitely be a transition that like we're seeing now, where the light has to win, which implies some level of well, it applies a big level of conflict to bring about the harmony. The fourth ray, as the fourth ray comes in, the manifestation here in 2025, and we're feeling the effects of it now, along with the Aquarian age, which is symbolized by the water carrier and Uranus, which is the mental and the really high level of energy, essentially first ray energy. So this is, if we're looking at it from that standpoint, if these things are definitely changing, the seventh ray is coming in right now. It's in, and sixth ray is going out. So we're seeing the results of people that are affected more or less differently by the different energies,
Mhm.
That really justifies this strange dynamic that we see interacting with in the personalities, I guess. Well, listen to me, man. I'm just pondering too. I
No,
just,
I know.
I don't know
Well,
nothing. We're just, it's amazing.
Let's see what DK has to say here. So, putting the truth as simply as possible, we might state that through the complexity of much speech making and book writing, ideas are now enabled to take form and so run through their cycle of activity. But this method is as unsatisfactory in the field of knowledge as is the ancient tallow dip in the field of illumination. Electric light has superseded it, and someday the true telepathic communication and vision will take place of speech and of writings. So that is just what we just belabored over for about the past 10 minutes. It's funny how he always goes into what.
Do you know what a tallow dip is?
A tallow dip.
It's a reed that had been dipped in melted tallow, or sometimes a strip of burning cloth and a saucer of tallow grease.
Tallow, isn't that like it's grease that's oil or grease that's made out of like fat of
Once was widely used to make molded candles.
Yeah.
Before more convenient wax varieties became.
Yeah, you make it out of beef fat.
Okay.
Or you can make it out of beef fat. It's actually quite good to use. Anyway, yeah, you and I can talk about that offline.
Okay.
All right. I'm hesitant to go on any further because it's running on 1 o'clock, and I think we might have been reading for a bit. What do you think?
Where is it?
Well,
I think we finished. Yeah.
Let's read to salvation of our thought forms, and then we can call it a wrap for the day. So there's only a few more paragraphs here.
Yeah, this might get a little interesting here, but yeah, it's fine.
I would agree. I just got to find my place. I just read that paragraph there, right? So carrying the same concepts into the field of real esoteric work, we have the worker in thought matter building his thought form and confining the lives which express and respond to his idea within a ring past knots. This latter persists for as long as his mind attention and hence his ensouling energy is directed upon it. We have him pronouncing the words which will enable his thought form to do its work, fulfill the mission for which it has been constructed, and carry out the purpose for which it was created. All that has been given out hitherto in connection with the words used in the creative work is the sevenfold sacred word, Aum, A-U-M. This, when rightly used by the soul on the mental plane, vitalizes and expedites all thought forms, and so produces successful enterprise. It is interesting to note that in Atlantean days, the word used was Tau, T-A-U, enunciated explosively and so forcefully that the thought forms thus energized and expedited acted inevitably like a boomerang and returned to the one who sent them forth. The word Tau, T-A-U, is likewise in its symbolic form, the symbol of reincarnation. It is desire for form which produces the use of form and causes cyclic and constant rebirth in form. It was the constant use of the Tau likewise, which brought about the final overwhelming with water, which swept away the ancient Atlantean civilization. The few who used the Aum, A-U-M, in those days were not potent enough to offset the force of desire. The mind bodies of the race could not respond to that newer creative sound. Humanity was still swept entirely by longing and desire to such an extent that the united desire for possessions and for the enjoyment of form drove men esoterically into the waters. Desire for form still forces upon humanity the constant process of rebirth until such time as the Tau, T-A-U, influence is exhausted and the Aum, A-U-M, sound can dominate. The former influence is, however, weakening, and the Aum, A-U-M, is increasing in potency until it will be the dominating factor. To this latter sound, the word of the soul must eventually succeed, until Aum, A-U-M, in its turn, is entirely superseded. The sound of many waters, which is the symbolic way of expressing the Tau influence, T-A-U, will cease, and the time will come, as we are assured in the Christian Bible, when there will be no more sea. Then the sound of the Aum, which is symbolically spoken of as the roaring of a blazing fire, and which is the sound of the mental plane, will take its place. The word of the soul cannot be given except in the secret place of initiation. It has its own peculiar vibration and note, but this cannot be conveyed until such time as the Aum is used with correctness, just as the Tau, carrying the note of desire and of the urge to have and need to be, or the desire and of the urge to have and to be, was misused and carried its civilizations to disaster. So Aum can also be misused and can carry its civilizations into the fire. This is the truth which really underlies the misunderstood Christian teaching and hellfire and the lake of fire. They portray symbolically the end of the age, when the mental plane civilizations will come to a cataclysmic end. As far as the form aspect is concerned, just as the earlier civilizations came to a watery consummation. One hint here I will give, and one that is oft overlooked. On the mental plane, time is not. Therefore, the time equation enters not into the idea of a final ending by fire. There is no setting of a time for a disaster or a catastrophe. The full effect will take place in the realm of the mind. and may it not be said that even now the fire of anxiety, of foreboding, of worry, and of fear is burning up our thoughts and engrossing our mental attention? Its work is to purify and cleanse. So let the Aum do its work, and let all of you who can employ it with frequency and with right thought, so that the world purification may proceed apace. Much must be burned and consumed, which bars the way for the emergence of the new ideas, the new archetypal forms. These will eventually dominate the new age and make it possible for the word of the soul to sound forth and be heard exoterically. I realize that which I have imparted here is difficult of comprehension, but the paragraphs above dictated hold warning for the careless and much instruction for the earnest seeker after light. There are two aspects of this phrase which we are considering, with which I seek briefly to deal. There are many which I might take up, but two will suffice to carry practical suggestion and to indicate ideas which aspirants everywhere would do well to grasp. The thought of salvation from the effect of form embodied ideas must be considered. And I would like also to cover the idea of a saving from under two headings. The aspirant has to be saved from the thought forms built daily during his mental life, and a soul in incarnation has also to be saved from the form attachments which during the ages have grown and strengthened, and from which he has to be released through the process we call death. We will therefore divide our subject as follows. 1. Salvation from the power exerted by the thought forms we have ourselves created. 2. Salvation from the power of the threefold body, which the soul has built through the magical release called death. It is with the latter that I wish primarily to deal, but certain things must be said concerning the power of thought forms and concerning their danger and the mode whereby they can be rendered innocuous. So that is where we will pick up next time. Salvation from our thought forms. Whew, we covered a lot today.
Yeah, that is some seriously intense stuff that we just got through there at the end.
Yeah, I just wanted to
And
come back. Go ahead, finish your thought.
well, I want to tell you this either way, so I might as well just say it. This Akara, at this AUM, and it says is representative of Akara, Ukara, and Makara, and have in it the triplicity again. And I'm trying to figure out this. If you look at it, it's the TAU,
Yeah.
and then it's the AUM. Well, where did the T come from? So I looked up Takara, which is a female name for Japanese origin. It means treasure. But the other one I found is insinuated it had something to do with a jewel or a treasure. And I'm thinking that being a female, it probably had something to do with matter, right? Mother matter, the physical plane. So, and now the AUM having to do with spirit. So there is this shift in that union, that shift from matter to spirit, or the union of spirit and matter. I'm thinking. But Makara, I want to say it has to do with the M, with the mental principle, the mental body, I think. I'd have to, anyway, listen, don't listen to me. I'm gonna research it again. I'm gonna research it again. That's very interesting. Because I mean, the AUM, the Om is like pretty huge deal in all this, right?
Right.
So studying that in itself can probably elucidate or bring out, illuminate a lot of this stuff here. So, and this tau, this T being left off, and
that was the what do you say here? That was the sound used in the Atlantean age, right? And just reading over this again quickly. Carrying the note of desire and the urge to have and to be was misused and carried its civilization to disasters. So Alm can also be misused. And so, yeah, it's important to
I want to say it,
use it correctly.
this T is like it's energizing the material aspect, and the AUM energizing the spiritual energy, more or less. The male, the difference between the male and the female, or the spirit and matter. But anyway, really very awesome.
Yeah. Well, this took me a little bit here.
Because look, I mean, he even says up here, desire for form. Rebirth. This is where it had a lot to do with the Tao, and then it's exhausted, and the Om sound can dominate, and the Om, being spirit. Yeah. Anyway, pretty cool. What were you going to say, sir? I'm sorry if I cut you off there.
Well, no, just as it's going into the.
Oh, here it says right here, just as the Tao carrying a note of desire and of the urge to have and to be. So that's the astral, right? As soon as you see desire, that insinuates the astral. And then the M, if that T falls off, the A slides forward, the M gets put on the back, and then that has to do with mental.
Well, yeah, it says right here.
Now we're energizing.
Which is the sound of the mental plane.
Oh, good, yeah.
Yep. The word of the soul cannot be given except in secret place of initiation. And it has its own peculiar vibration and note, but this cannot be conveyed until such time that the Aum is used with correctness. Otherwise, misused can carry its civilization into the fire. But I found this interesting, the truth that which underlies the misunderstood Christian teaching of the anent hellfire and the lake of fire. It's really more of a symbolic portrayal of the end of an age, when the mental plane civilizations will come to a cataclysmic end as far as the form aspect is concerned, just as the earlier civilizations came to a watery consummation, I'm assuming via the big flood. And then he goes on here. Mental plane, time is not, therefore the time equation enters not into the idea of a final ending by fire. There is no setting of a time for a disaster or a catastrophe. The full effect will take place in the realm of the mind. And may it not be said that even now the fire of anxiety, of foreboding, of worry, and of fear is burning up our thoughts and engrossing our mental attention. So is this
destruction by anxiety?
I was going to say this quote unquote apocalypse is all mental. Like,
oh, it certainly is.
Everybody's going to go loony birds. Well, we're kind of seeing some of that now.
And well, guess what the mental plane is symbolized by? You know
Yeah.
what it is. It's fire.
Right. Right, but it doesn't seem to indicate here that it's going to be a physical fire. It's
It doesn't have to be. It's symbolic.
Everybody's going to be burning everything away mentally.
Well, there's going to come a point, I want to say, that after much experience is garnered here, and we've gone through all the experiments of life, and experience and expressed it, everybody's going to hit the soul level at some
Right.
point. It's inevitable.
Right.
Now, they say the pioneers of the race are pushing forward to do that much faster and sooner, but we're going to hit it. And then when you hit that, there's going to be an illumination that's going to rock,
Yeah.
everybody's, world.
Yeah.
Well, that's very deep, man, because the path of initiation is very different than just living in the lower three worlds too. So how this goes about, I don't know. But, I mean, they're as the scales are tipped and people are illuminated, and more people are on the mental plane and staying and operating from that place, surely it's going to have gigantic impact in the collective, and the collective is going to make this switch over. And if Christ, when Christ appears, during that, at some point, it's going to be reappears, or whatever you want to call it. What a fitting date to talk about that, but that's gonna have some serious mental implications. Man, you can probably, I want to say, the great invocation sticks out,
Yeah.
as we're reading it, like,
May
because
Christ
that,
return to earth. From
Yeah,
the point of
and-
love
but-
within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth.
yeah, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. And sealing the door where evil dwells is really astral, right?
Mhm.
More or less. I think that's, you have to make your decision in order to get, to seal the door. So, yeah, this is great. So this Om is helping, transcend the astral.
Right. But it needs to be used carefully and correctly. Otherwise, it can make a person go cuckoo birds.
Which means there
So that-
was probably, there was a word before the Tau. As well. Because it would have been for the physical plane.
Right.
And that would have been, that's interesting. That's a puzzle. Kind of a word puzzle there. It would have been something blank TA, maybe, right?
Possibly. But do we need to really give that a whole lot of thought?
No.
It's just interesting now.
Yeah. Yeah, that certainly is. And yeah,
Yeah. So, well, that's what I got out of this little last bit here, is that this is going to be our flood is going to be a mental catastrophe for folks, I guess. I don't know. That was just my take. But anyway,
I mean, you can see that. It makes a lot of sense.
yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I think you're kind of seeing some of that occur now, because I can certainly say that you're not going to be using the Aum correctly if you're listening to the mass media.
But if there is a lot of, if truth is, if there's a lot of truth revealed to the, if what's been hidden is revealed, and that's biblical, right?
Mm,
Then you would see what we're talking about happen there. Because people would have no choice. We'd have no choice but to have a mental kind of apocalypse.
right,
But there would be many people to help others through it at that point.
right.
You would certainly be able to help if a bunch of truth has been revealed, because you've been seeing it from the mental plane, for a while. So yeah, it's great, man.
All right. Well, yeah, we covered quite a bit. But yeah, so next time we'll pick up on the salvation from our thought forms and see where that takes us.
Sounds good. All right, buddy. Happy Easter.
You too.